Hi guys. Volo Bog began to form about 12,000 years ago when the Wisconsin Glacier receded from northeastern Illinois. Large blocks of ice broke away from the glacier and were buried in clay, sand, gravel, and boulders, collectively called glacial till, that washed out of the melting glacier. As the climate warmed, those ice blocks melted, forming depressions called kettle holes. Lakes, bogs, marshes, and other wetlands formed in the kettles. The original lake here was very poorly drained with steep banks. Due to the stagnancy, anaerobic, low oxygen conditions were created, causing slow and complete decomposition of organic debris, forming peat. The poor drainage also caused a buildup of acids, which further inhibited decomposition. About 6,000 years ago, the lake began to fill with organic sediments. Eventually, a floating mat of peat supported by the roots of living plants began to form and encroach upon the old glacial lake, which now is filling in from the bottom up and formed the top down. The edge of a kettle. Notice the trees and shrubs extending to the left and right. These mark the edges of the old glacial lake. The marsh moat beyond is the outer ring surrounding Volo Bog. The wooden boardwalk will lead through this and 4 other unique vegetational communities. Passing from one community to the next is like walking backwards in time. 3. Cattail Cafeteria. Cattails dominate the marshlands of northeastern Illinois. They provide cover and food for a great variety of wildlife. Muskrats eat the roots, leaves, and young shoots and build lodges with their leaves. Insects eat cattails and are in turn eaten by red-winged blackbirds who build nests among the long flowering leaves. Listen quietly for a few minutes to discover these and other inhabitants of the marsh zone. 4. Other plants of the marsh. Hold on. There's nothing written.
This would be the moment I turn on to the next page.
No, it goes 4 other plants in the marsh. Oh, should I just name those?
Yeah, okay.
I hope he does it. This is our final take.
Okay. Jewelweed, woolgrass, water plantain, arrowhead, water dock, marsh skullcap. 5. Tall shrubs. Winterberry holly, the dominant plant in the tall shrub community, is so named due to the persistence of the berries after the leaves have fallen. It flowers in June. Oils throughout poison sumac may cause a rash worse than poison ivy. Learn to recognize the gray bark and compound leaves. 6. Dead trees and ancient ferns. The tamarack tree is here drowned during times of high water. Living tamaracks lie ahead, growing on the floating mat that keeps them just moist enough but never too wet. Look for signs of life in the decaying wood. Look for ferns, descendants of tree-sized plants that were browsed upon by dinosaurs. 7. Tamaracks and sphagnum moss. Tamaracks are unusual pines. They're deciduous. Every fall, their needles turn golden and drop into peat soils, releasing tannic acid. Notice how the water is stained brown by these acids. Feel the soft needles clustered on the spur shoots. The fact that these tamaracks are alive and well indicates that they are on the floating mat. Their shallow, spreading roots receive a constant amount of soil moisture as the trees float up and down with the changing water levels. Tamaracks were valued by shipbuilders who used the trunk and a main root which grows at a right angle to the trunk as angles for the holes. Sphagnum moss carpets the ground here. Native American Indians' moms took advantage of the absorptive properties of the dried moss, lining their cradle boards with it for a sort of diaper. Soldiers of early battles used sphagnum as a sterile field dressing, for the moss produces acids which inhibits bacteria. 8. Carnivorous plants. Look for carnivorous pitcher plants. Their leaves are modified like cups or pitchers to hold water. Insects are lured within, down inside by the glistening water which they make for a meal of nectar. Instead, they become a meal themselves, trapped by the slippery leaf surface and the down-pointing hairs inside. The dead insect decomposes, releasing nitrogen and phosphorus to be absorbed by the leaf. Orchids and Indian pipes. 6 species of orchids have been documented in Volo Bog. Only the rose begonia remains, blooming June through early July. Indian pipe white because they lack green chlorophyll. They obtain nutrients from the decaying matter just under the surface of the moss. Open water in natural succession. This pond is all that remains of the old Kettle Hole Lake that once covered about 50 acres. Over the past 6,000 years, it has been filling in with dead vegetation, peat, that is encroaching upon the middle. Today, Volo Bog is the only such peatland in Illinois to still have an open water center surrounded by floating soils. Eventually, even this will fill in. This is a natural process called succession. In nature, nothing stays the same for long. When is a bog not a bog? A true bog is mineral poor, as it receives water only from the sky. By this definition, Volo Bog does not qualify because some runoff does feed into the wetland basin from the surrounding hills. Volo Bog can be classified as fen. Furthermore, humans have altered the drainage, allowing for an inlet and at least a couple of outlets. The floating peat mat, however, may fill most of the minerals from the water before it reaches the center. Why then are snails occasionally seen? They need calcium to form shells. Could the gravel qualify a half-mile east of Volo Bog be contributing minerals as dust on the early wetlands? These are questions that have yet to be answered. Meanwhile, can we accept that nature does not always fit neatly into categories we try to impose? 10. Wetland life. Sit quietly for a while and watch. Listen for a splash of water where a muscat or mink swims. Bullfrogs drum in chorus, and birds call to each other as insects buzz nearby.
Okay, want to do it again? I'll say it.